Hello everyone, my name is Rob, welcome to Kinetic Rugby League. In this video I'm going to be giving you my Super League Round 23 tips and predictions. Now if you want to see how I got on last week, you can check the pinned comment down below. Without further ado, let's get started on the games for this week. Kicking things off, we have the Salford Red Devils versus Wakefield Trinity. Starting with league position, Salford currently sit in 6th place on the ladder, Wakefield in 12th. In terms of form, Salford have won 1 in the last 5, Wakefield have won 2 in the last 5. I really wasn't expecting the win from Salford last week. Not at all. I thought that Huddersfield were in a great place. Salford were in an awful place. I just didn't see it happening. What a strong statement from Salford. You know, there are nuances in the games, so it's not always clear cut. But for me, it was such a strong statement that I can really back them this week. And given that Wakefield, I backed them to beat a struggling Castleford team, I don't know. For me, this would have been a little bit of a question mark. But after seeing the results from last week, I just feel so much more confident about Salford. So I'm going to go with Salford 30, Wakefield 12. Next up, we have the Hull Kingston Rovers versus Leigh Leopards. Starting off with league position, Hull KR currently sit in 7th. Leigh currently sit in 4th. In terms of form, Hull have won 2 in the last 5. Leigh have won 3 in the last 5. Right now, on Bet365, Hull KR are slight favourites. Very slight favourites. Even when Leigh have not been favourites, like the first half of the season, they still came out with wins. And even when they've been doubted by me, or fans, or bookies, they've still come out with the wins. And that's kind of how I'm going to go with this one. I think Hull KR certainly, they're fighters. They are incredibly underappreciated this year, I think. But I think, they're starting to get a bit more credit, especially after the final. And seeing the effort that they put in as well. They're getting a lot more credit. But Leigh are just a better team. Simple as that. I think even with their lack of depth, even with players missing, I think the rest of the team is still just good enough to get it done, honestly. And Hull KR, I think, can absolutely win this game. They will want revenge for the Challenge Cup final, but for me, Leigh are just too strong. But I think this will absolutely be another cracking game between these two teams. So I'm going to go with Hull KR 18, Leigh Leopards 20. Next up, we have the Castleford Tigers versus St Helens. Starting with league position, Castleford currently sit in 11th place on the ladder. Saints currently sit in 3rd. Looking at form, Castleford have won 1 in the last 5. Saints have won 4 in the last 5. For me, this is a very clear-cut game. Castleford not in a great place. Yes, they did win like the most important game of the season at this point, beating Wakefield in last place to make sure they give themselves a gap, because we don't know when the wins are going to come again for Castleford. We don't know when the wins are going to come again for Wakefield. So there was a really important win for them. And confidence will be good, but Saints have just been too clinical. All the rust that they had in the first half of the season, I think, is kind of gone. Like, there's still, teams can still find ways to score against them. They're not perfect by any means, but the rust that they did have, which we didn't think they should have, has kind of gone. So again, they're not perfect, but at this point they're just too strong. I don't see any reason to back Castleford. Not that they can't win, because as we've seen from this season, anything can happen, but I just don't see it. I see a really strong win from Saints here, so I'm going to go with Castleford 8, St Helens 28. Next up, we have Hull FC versus Warrington Wolves. Starting with league position, Hull FC currently sit in 9th place. Warrington currently sit in 5th place. Looking at form, Hull FC have won 3 in the last 5. Warrington have won 0 in the last 5. So Hull have been, the last couple of months have continued to be solid. They're always in like the 2 out of 5, 3 out of 5, 4 out of 5 range. It's never all bad. It's never all great. They're kind of just within the middle ground of that spectrum. So that's at least good to see. There's a fair bit of consistency. They are competitive enough week after week, not always perfect again, but not always disastrous. They've certainly improved, and again, as I mentioned with Saints, they had their own rust. It was a lot worse because they were, near the bottom. They weren't fighting in the middle. They're right near the bottom. But they are firmly in a position to fight for a playoff spot. It's really competitive in the middle. And Hull FC are one of those teams that I actually trust. But looking at Warrington, one thing that I mentioned about them in terms of, before predicting a score against Leeds was that this is now more like a Gary Chambers team. He's had more chance to look at, look at the players, and Martin Gleeson came in so that there's going to be things that Warrington do which Leeds won't really have footage of to kind of pinpoint of nuances that Warrington's going to try. Maybe there are things that Hull FC can pick out from Warrington's attack last week to limit Warrington, but this might be my own bias coming into this one as a Wire fan, but I do think there was enough fight, there was enough of a different looking team last week for Warrington to where they can maybe beat a sort of up and down Hull team. But if they do, it's a really close competitive game. Even if Warrington don't win, I still think it'll be close and competitive. Because looking at the individuals that Warrington have, Matt Duffy at his best is a dangerous player. George Williams, Paul Vaughan, Darryl Clark. There's plenty of dangerous players all around this Warrington team. Hull FC have been really strong and pretty consistent, but I don't know. This might be my own bias coming into this one. But I think Warrington can finally get it done. So I'm going to go with Hull FC 24, Warrington Wolves 26. Next up, we have the Catalans Dragons versus Wigan Warriors. Starting with league position, Catalans currently sit in first place on the ladder, Wigan in second. Looking at form, Catalans have won 4 in the last 5, Wigan have won 4 in the last 5 as well. Now, I was expecting a really competitive game between Leigh and Catalans. It was for the first half, and then Catalans just ran away with it. Now, that's kind of how I see it going this week. I think it could be 6-6, 10-10, 12-12 by half time, and Catalans run away with it. Nothing major. I think this will be a relatively low scoring game. Only a couple tries back and forth. But Catalans are just too strong, even against a Wigan team that have got so many incredible individuals. For me, Catalans are just too strong in defence, too creative and dangerous in attack, that I think Wigan will have their moments, they'll look good, but for me, Catalans are just too strong overall. They're not perfect, they're not impenetrable, but the way that they consistently put in strong performance defensively and in attack just gives me enough confidence to say that they can have a strong win against Wigan. Nothing crazy, but I think by 80 minutes, I don't think Wigan will really be in a position to fight for a win here. But you never know, because they are still a quality team at their best. So I'm going to go with Catalans 24, Wigan Warriors 12. Finally for this week, we have the Huddersfield Giants versus Leeds Rhinos. Starting with league position, Huddersfield currently sit in 10th, Leeds in 8th. In terms of form, Huddersfield have won 3 in the last 5, Leeds have won 2 in the last 5. So as I mentioned for Salford against Huddersfield, I was not expecting that scoreline. I really wasn't. And I don't really know what to put my finger on for that. It's just a bit, just shouldn't happen really. It just really shouldn't happen. Now Leeds put in a good enough performance against Warrington to get the win. Maybe they should have been a little bit more comfortable, maybe, but it almost seems like Leeds should be in the better position here at this point, even though Huddersfield have the better form right now. It feels like Leeds should be in the better position, but I still kind of trust Huddersfield to get back to winning ways. I think last week was just a bit of a weird one, bit of a throwaway, and Leeds for me are still too shaky at this point because they were still, had poor form last week, and they come into this week with poor form again. So that hasn't really changed. There isn't a new narrative for Leeds. Whereas Huddersfield, I still feel, is a competitive team, and they are fighting, and they're right there, joining that midfield battle and pushing for a playoff spot. So I'm going to go with Huddersfield 24, Leeds Rhinos 18. So that is going to be it for this video. If you have any predictions for this week, let me know in the comments down below. Also, let me know how you got on last week. I hope you like the new graphics. Just trying something out. I might consider keeping them. We will see. Just wanted to try something different, but I hope you liked them anyway. Trying to make them as close to the logos as possible. So, like, when you look at the logo, the artwork basically looks like the logo, just in a more realistic form. It's a bit cartoonish, but so I'll try something new. I hope you liked it. So that's going to be it for this video. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.